For those of you who don't know who James Lindsay is, he is an academic which showed what a joke modern university has become. Him with a couple of his colleagues wrote a paper where they took Mein Kampf and replaced a couple of words. Like instead of Jews, they said straight white men, and instead of the Nazis, they would say feminism. And they submitted that paper for peer review at a prestigious university. Guess what? It actually got through. And they also posed themselves as being like women of color, and some of them were invited in order to have a speech at university. It was like a big affair. But that's how he became famous. And since then, he has a YouTube channel as well as a Twitter. And he is doing his best in order to go through the academic literature and explain to the common man what the progressive intelligentsia is doing. Or as we call it today, the woke intelligentsia. And here we have him talking about why communism is against nuclear power. Now, I have said it on my channel many times that the people who are pushing environmentalism, especially the people at the top, they're not interested in fixing the problem. They're interested in gaining more power. And it's easy to see that because they do not have restrictions on yachts. They do not have restrictions on private jets. They use these things in order to travel to various meetings where they talk about the environment, when those meetings could easily be done on Skype. So, you get like some of the wealthiest and most powerful people in the world lecturing the peasantry about climate change, right? Something just doesn't seem right. Like, you should lead by example if you're genuinely concerned that the world is ending. So that was my take. Like, my number one take is that they're not interested in this. They just want more power. And if they were to find an energy source which doesn't pollute, it doesn't create carbon, then there wouldn't be a need for socialism. And this is exactly what James Lindsay found out by reading the literature. He says that, I think I found out that the theory reason for why they're against nuclear power, I mean, obviously they're against it because it prevents energy scarcity, but there's the elusive explanation in the theory. I've not known until I come some stuff about degrowth communism last night. It's called technological lock-in, which the Marxists, of course, turned into a pun that means two things at once. When a technology massively improves a part of life, it becomes basically impossible to imagine living without it. So you get locked in the technology. Fossil fuels and plastics are two pretty easy examples. Imagine trying to go back to a life without them. Now do smartphones and computers, or cars. You organize life around lock-in technologies. Even at the societal scale, they become a basis for continuity, not revolution. This is something very interesting if you happen to read Anthony Gramsci. Anthony Gramsci was a communist of his time, and he noticed that the reason the revolutionary spirit is robbed from the worker in places like the United Kingdom is because the worker has time to unwind. It's because the worker is going to sleep with a full belly. So basically, again, like the problem with socialists, and I'm not talking like every single socialist that there is, like I'm not talking about your random Twitter Marxist. I'm talking about the intelligentsia and the politicians. They use socialism in order to gain power. Like that is their interest. Their goal is to gain power. Their goal is not to create the world that they advertise. They're doing false advertisement. So if you have a capitalist system where the worker is not oppressed, where the worker manages to go to bed happy and with a filled belly, they hate that system, right? Like normally they shouldn't, because like they want the worker to actually be uplifted. But when you have a system where the worker is happy and he even has like social mobility and whatnot, they despise it because they don't get to be in power. So this is what Gramsci talks about when he points out that the revolutionary spirit is robbed in the West. And his solution is to push communism in every form of entertainment. Like you watch football, you get communism. You go to church, you gain communism. You go to your work and they talk about communism. Now Gramsci died in 1937, and you can see how his work resonates today, where instead of communism, you get woke ideology everywhere. You watch football, you get woke ideology. You watch a beer commercial, you get woke ideology. You play video games. This is so that the constant friction exists. is so that the person doesn't have time to unwind. The person doesn't have time to just entertain themselves. And this is how you create the revolutionary spirit. And this is exactly what the Marxists are talking here regarding nuclear energy. They don't want people to be filled and happy. Because if you have this concept of free, cheap energy available to everyone and you eliminate scarcity, then people become happy. There's no need for a revolution. So, apparently, Marxists want to prevent technological lock-in with nuclear and deploy the Greens to get it done because they realize the incredible stabilizing power of nuclear energy, which would simultaneously rob them of their magic climate propaganda push. The Greens in Germany banned nuclear energy. Locking, and by the way, like I think, even during the energy crisis, they were shutting down nuclear reactors, right? So you have this energy that doesn't produce carbon, which is nuclear, and they don't want it. It's very interesting. Now, some will say, yeah, but like, what about the waste, the nuclear waste? Well, first of all, as the technology advances, modern nuclear reactors are producing less and less waste. But secondly, so do the windmills and so do the electric cars produce waste. That also is a problem because when you look at the massive amounts of solar batteries that don't function, like they can't be recycled. You have to bury them somewhere. Sure, it's not as bad as nuclear waste, but still. So anyway, apparently locking technologies are also ones that necessitate control over production in a small number of hands, thus locking out most people. While anyone could have a solar panel or windmill, in eco-utopia, almost no one can own a nuclear power plant. So anyway, they're against nuclear because, number one, it would get people too used to the energy abundance, which would stabilize them and make them counter-revolutionary. And number two, it would necessarily locate the means of production in a small number of hands, which probably wouldn't be theirs. It's also like the fact that they don't really care about technology that's locked into the small number of hands as long as they control it. Like, for example, social media, right? As long as you have like left-leaning people that get to call the shots and get to decide what the terms of service are, what people can and can't talk about, they don't get upset that this is a locking technology. I mean, in the modern world, you can't live without social media. It's very difficult to get a job without social media. It's very difficult to stay in touch with your close circle of friends without social media. In some cases, I would say it's even difficult to get a date. So what it shows is that they're not against what they consider locked-in technologies as long as they have their people in there. But like a technology like a nuclear power plant where the law tells that the power plant should give electricity to everybody and they can't just pull people off the grid, well, they hate that. Right? Like, how can they do cancel culture with that? Well, what they want is for